What is your relationship with risk? How do you distinguish between what is risky and what is safe? How much risk do you take on in your life? Should you be taking on more? In today's video number 6 of 10 in my 10-day sprint, we are going to talk about how you can learn to take on more risk in your life. More intelligent risks, that is. Now, look, don't get me wrong. There are some obvious risks that you should not take in life. For example, don't get in a cage with a hungry tiger. Don't run across a busy highway with a blindfold on. And don't invest your life savings in a penny stock. These fall into a long list of risks you should obviously avoid. But what about more complicated risks? What about the risk of quitting a job that you hate? What about the risk of asking someone out? What about the risk of ending a relationship? What about the risk of telling the truth when it might be controversial or difficult to do so? What about the risk of going to the gym for the first time in your life at age 40 when you're in absolutely terrible shape? Before we get into these examples, let's talk a little bit about us as humans. We have this incredible threat detection system left over from our evolutionary history when we had to evade predators while also trying to hunt prey ourselves. This was incredibly useful to have when we saw a hungry lion stalking us off in the distance, just as it is still incredibly useful to have when we see a speeding car coming towards us. Now, for this threat detection system to be effective, it had to be overly cautious. One mistake could result in death. But this is also where risk assessment started to come into the picture. Yes, there might be a hungry lion off in the distance, but you're also a hungry primate and your favorite nut tree is off in the distance too. Was it worth it to go after something that you wanted, something that you really needed, even though there was the risk of destruction? Fast forward to today, where most of the world's population has almost zero risk of being mauled by a wild cat. Unless you're this guy. But obviously, other threats still remain. We have existential threats. We have social threats. We have financial threats. We have resource-based threats, and so on. How should we move forward given the risk? What kind of risks should you be willing to take to get what you want? First, we have to get something out on the table, and this might be the most important part of the video. Everything we do has risk. Nothing we do is 100% safe, and the utopian idea of achieving permanent security one day is exactly that. It's a fantasy. No matter how much money you have, no matter how powerful your friends are, we are all vulnerable to life. Now, look, for some people, this might be a scary idea. I'm not saying this to scare you. First of all, I'm saying this because I think it's true. But I'm also saying this because this is a liberating idea. Stop looking for the easy path. Stop looking for the safe path because it doesn't exist. Start looking for the best path for you, the most meaningful path, the path that will create the best version of you, the best life for you. But to do that, we need to change the way that we think about risk. So let's go back to our examples from before and start to break them down a little bit. Is there risk in quitting your job? Absolutely. What if you can't find a new job? What if you run out of money? What if your new gig is even worse than your old gig? But don't fool yourself into thinking that what you're doing now carries zero risk. What's going to happen if you keep doing something that you hate? You will lose your self-respect. You will lose your life force, your energy, your soul in some respect. You will get bitter and slowly take it out on the people that you care about. You will start to blame the world for your problems because that's the only way to justify your own inaction. No one wants to become that person. So what should you do instead? Well, you should take an intelligent risk. So if you hate your job, I'm not telling you to go quit tomorrow. I'm telling you to start coming up with a plan, an exit strategy, creating a little bit of runway. So for example, make sure you have a new job before you quit your old one. That's generally best practice. Learn a new skill if you have to get the job that you actually want. And be patient. Understand that change might take time. It might take 1, 2, 3 years even. But you need to stop pretending that your current job carries zero risk or is even less risky. The version of you 5 years from now that is in the same job and hates that job even more than before is not someone that you want to become. Let's move to the next example. Is it risky to ask someone out? Definitely. They might say no, they might humiliate you, or you might humiliate you. Maybe this person is even a friend or an acquaintance, and you don't want to risk ending that friendship or complicating the current relationship that you have with that person. But what about the risk of not asking someone out? Well, you might be missing out on meeting your future husband or wife. You're going to be missing out on improving your social skills, your competence in that area, your confidence for that matter. And if nothing else, you might be missing out on a damn good time. There's risk on both sides. It's risky to ask someone out just like there's risk in not asking someone out. But you have to realize that the thing that you want, that person, is on the other side of that risk. Your love life doesn't get any better when you're sitting on the sidelines. Let's take one more example from above. Is it risky to go to the gym in your 40s or 50s or even in your 20s when you have never been before and you're terribly out of shape? I like this one because we all know by now how important exercise is for our health. But of course, as with everything else in life, there is risk in trying to improve your health. There is risk in trying to get into shape. So what if you go to the gym and everyone there judges you? What if no one judges you and you still feel like a damn fool? What if you really hurt yourself? What if you strain something, pull something, or even break something? And what if, in the extreme, you collapse and die? These are all risks that you're taking on when you exercise. But of course, what are the risks of not exercising? Well, they are well known by now. They include an increased risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, higher levels of anxiety and depression, poor sleep, low energy, and on and on. There's also the positive mental side effects that you're missing out on when you don't work out. So for example, I just ran for 6.5 kilometers, which for me is a PR. The feeling that I got from achieving that new best is amazing. It feels incredible to overcome these physical obstacles in my life. So with all of these examples, what we start to notice is we tend to see immediate risk as riskier than long-term risk. We don't want anything bad to happen now. We don't want to feel uncomfortable now. And what we're doing is we're failing to see how our so-called safe actions are creating a riskier future. We need to consider how we might feel 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now when we're making these day-to-day decisions. So the big payoff here is, how do we learn to do this? How do we learn how to take on more risks? We do this the same way that we get over our fears. So let's use a random example. Let's say you're afraid of clowns. How do you think you're going to overcome that fear? Do you think you will overcome that fear by avoiding clowns? Do you think you will overcome that fear by running away from a clown whenever you see one? No, the best way to overcome a fear is to confront it little by little. You take on as much as you can in that moment. So maybe a picture of a clown is terrifying. You need to sort of intelligently expose yourself to these images in a way that you feel safe. And from there you move on to the next thing. Maybe being in the same room as a clown is terrifying. Maybe being within 6 feet of a clown is terrifying. It's starting to feel silly, but I think you get the point. You have to expose yourself little by little over time to overcome your fear. It's the same thing with risks. So to overcome your sort of fear of risks, you have to do the same thing. You have to take on intelligent, bite-sized risks and expand from there. Okay, I don't want to risk going on too long in this video. So let's wrap this up, shall we? There is no such thing as a safe, risk-free life. There's risk everywhere. This fact shouldn't scare us. It should liberate us to pursue a life that is meaningful to us. Perhaps in doing this, we grow stronger in the face of risk. We learn how to handle it. Perhaps the only way to create that sense of safety in our life is to go out and confront risk. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.